Welcome back to the Inquipod. We are interviewing Simon Steuri, a first-time director. We got to screen his film, so I don't want to hold anything up. We're going to go ahead and get to that interview. Well, yeah, welcome to the Inqua podcast, Simon. So glad we were able to get connected.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it looks a little late there. Where are you based at?
I'm in LA.
Oh, you're in LA. Okay.
Yes.
You're
Yes.
right. It's a little little dark this hour.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
did you grow up here, or have you been a recent move,
No,
or?
no, I grew up in Switzerland, but I've been in Los Angeles for a little bit, less than 15 years.
Okay, so now you're like an LA native. Anything past
Kind of.
5 and you feel like you know the place, right?
That's true. That's true. I agree.
Well, let's talk about a little about, your background, how you got started. Where did your love for film and storytelling first start?
So I actually got my entry into the entertainment industry via radio. So when I was 18 years old, I got into national radio in Switzerland. I got a pretty big show. And, I worked there for over 10 years. And at some point, I was able to change from daytime radio into nighttime. And so that allowed me to go to film school during the day and then doing my radio shows at night. And, the show I did had a lot, it was a DJ show, but we also had a lot of bands and live acts. So from there, I knew the bands, I knew the music industry, and it kind of naturally evolved into music videos and then later on into commercials. And at some point, I just felt, with radio that I missing the visual aspect. That was also, one of the reasons I wanted to go to film school, to combine the visual thinking and the storytelling, I guess. And then at some point, I radio is very repetitive. You do the same shows and pretty much the same things all over again. And at some point, I just felt I needed a change, and I I left for LA.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. So straight from radio here, and I mean, now hearing you explain it makes a lot more sense while watching the film, How I Learned to Fly. Your taste and your touch for music shows up in the movie all the way throughout. You put in just the right points, you picked exactly the right music, the score is beautiful, and it's interesting how you kind of take the story and the music together and kind of meld it at just the right points. And I bet that helped doing radio for all those years.
Yes, yeah. I mean, my love for music is I think it's really kind of what like all the stories start with. I often have this. I think music has this. Immediately connect to a certain emotion, and music makes that easy for you, or it makes it easy for me at least. So having a couple of songs capturing a mood, and then that allows me basically to see the story immediately. It just transports me into a certain place, a certain time with a certain light and characters.
Yeah. And where did the genesis for this movie come from? Because I know you've directed, like you said, some music videos. Is this your first feature as well?
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
I saw some short films on there. So yeah, I mean, I know a lot of our listeners are people wanting to get into filmmaking, starting out early, or even just an interest in the process. How many years ago did you first get this idea, start to work on it, write it down, say, I have a visual, here's what I want to see?
Well, it's actually something that, it's kind of amazing. It started with me growing up in this, remote, very small, very conservative town in Switzerland, where, like an environment with a lot of restrictions, a lot of rules, and there wasn't a lot of space for an artistic kid or later on teenager like me. or I just felt like very isolated, very misunderstood oftentimes. And the only place I felt really like myself was when I was reading or daydreaming. And so I lived in my head, and my dreams were very, colorful and probably already pretty precise, in many ways. But at night, I kept having this same nightmare that I would fall down a staircase. And I really dreamed, I really got that nightmare every couple of nights. So in many ways, I knew what was coming. And then I started to change the dream while I was dreaming it. First, I was able to control the fall a little bit, land softly, and then I would hover a couple of feet above ground. And later on, I basically taught myself how to fly in the dream, and I have these flying dreams to this day, and these are
Yeah.
my favorite dreams.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, I mean, I don't know if you call it a lucid dream, I guess it would kind of be a lucid
I
dream,
think
right?
so. I
Yeah,
think, yeah. I think
a
that's the term
phenomena.
for it. Yeah.
And that's where you got the name for this movie. And I mean, how did it go from the lucid dream and flying your dreams to the story of uh, a pair of brothers in a very
Yes.
urban setting and death and grief and kind of this the plot of this movie?
Yeah. So I had a couple of elements that I knew I wanted to achieve. So I wanted to do something simple, something doable. I owned a camera at the time, and so I just said, look, when I'm when I can shoot something in my neighborhood or in LA, it can be done cheaply. If I just have maybe two actors, a house, and a car, it's something that I can pull off myself in worst case scenario. And I had this, like this dream, the feeling of my teenage years, this isolation, carrying the world on my shoulders. But somehow I never fully connect all the dots. And one morning I went to this acupuncture session. And then while I was lying there with like needles all over my back, it suddenly hit me like a flash, or I don't know how to describe it. Maybe it was some kind of download, or in the lack of a better word. And I just it was the movie was just there. I had a feeling for the structure. I knew what the characters needed to be, who the characters needed to be. I heard them talk, like I had a sense for dialogue. And then I rushed back home and started to type like crazy. And within 10 days, I basically had a first draft. And of course, I refined it after that, but that was pretty close already to what we shot 2 years later.
2 years later, wow. I mean, it's pretty impressive, like you're saying, that you had such a moment of clarity, a download of the entire story, and then yeah, 10 days, 2 years. That's a lot quicker than a lot of other stories we hear out there, of movies taking 10 years to come up with an idea or 5 years or whatever else. And it's really cool to see that go from ideation to being filmed within that few, that short amount of time.
I agree.
Now, when it came to, taking the idea of the script and pitching it, did you find a producer easily? Did you already have connections in that way? Because you have a pretty great cast. I mean, there's some pretty big names here. What was that process like, taking the script and finding the right people to put it together?
Yeah, so I was working with Jewel Ross, Silent our management, and we worked pretty closely on that script. I wrote that first draft. He got me feedback, and then we would um started to you know we started to think about who could play these roles, especially and it's not easy, like it's a very delicate age, especially the younger of the brothers, with like in the script he is 12 or 13 years old, and finding great actors who could carry a whole movie basically by themselves was a big challenge. And so I never went through this process of casting before, especially for a movie. As we discussed, for I did the same thing for music videos or commercials, but that's pretty straightforward. Usually, you need a look or you need something very specific. But the only reference I had was my gut feeling and my inner compass. And so, when I sat down with Marcus Scribner, who plays the older of the brothers, he just, he just nailed it. And I, while I sat there, and he read, some scenes, I just got goosebumps, and I immediately knew, this is the feeling I was going for. And from there, after that, I think I really got lucky to get in touch with Lonnie Chavis, and he's just, he was 13 years old at the time and just beyond talented. And then, after that, I was a bit worried that these two match. But then, like, I brought them together and there was this immediate intimacy, like brotherly intimacy between the two. And seeing them, play these characters was just magical. And I knew I wanted them for the movie.
Yeah, I mean the bond they share from the get-go is impressive to watch. I hadn't even checked the cast list out before watching the movie, the screener there. And I thought they were brothers for at least the first 30 minutes. I was like, wait a second. They mesh so well. The way that the looks, the glances, I mean, to your point, Marcus Scribner, I mean, he knew exactly what his character needed to look like and to show, and he was so emotive. And in the same part, yeah, Lonnie Chavis playing a quieter role that's so visual because he doesn't speak so much throughout the entirety of the film. He does such a good job. I mean,
Yeah.
it blew me away.
And that was the other challenge. I always saw, and it's not explicitly said in the movie, but I always saw him on the autism spectrum. And so he has all these challenges, like on top of what's going on with his family, his mom, his dad, and having a 13-year-old kid playing such a complex character, it's not easy to find.
Yeah. And as far as, I mean, I know Cedric the Entertainer's been a big name for a long time. How did he get involved? Or, did he just read the script and love it? Or was it, a friend of a friend there?
Yeah, it was basically that, the agent of Marcus is the agent of, Cedric and Method Man. But the funny thing is, like, as another little anecdote, that I wrote the part for the dad, which Method Man plays, and I named it Cliff before I even know that Method Man, whose real name is Clifford, would actually play this part.
Pretty
So
serendipitous, yeah.
when he came on board, like he said, "Oh, like, this is my story. I want to be part of it. I see so many similarities to my own teenage years." And then we just, like, we came to the part with the name, and then I said, actually, I didn't even know that your real name is Clifford.
That's so funny that his name is Cliff, and he has such a commanding presence in the scenes that we really get to see him interact with Marcus's character, with Daniel. How was it directing, your first feature, Cedric the Entertainer? Marcus has been on Blackish, Method Man. How was it with some people that have, had some years in the industry? Were they teaching you things, or did you feel like you really had control and it was you already had it down from all your years on commercial shoots and things?
Well, I knew pretty much what I wanted and how it needed to feel. Again, it was more kind of the inner compass, but the beauty of working with these, like, caliber of actors, it's just really it's effortless because they offer you things that are already at such a great level that from there you can refine their performance the way you have it in mind, and it's you no longer need to discuss basics. That's already covered. You just start with little details and discuss, oh, like, let's try this, let's try the other things. And they offer you basically exactly what you describe, and I think that's just wonderful and amazing. And I was so grateful to work with such a great cast.
Yeah, and it shines through the film. I mean, with filming in LA, was it all in LA or was it mostly in LA?
It's basically all in LA except for a few of the dream sequences that were shot in Hawaii. Yeah, most of the shoot was in Carson, and then we had a couple of beach scenes out in Leo Carrillo, and yeah, and a couple of other places.
I mean, being an indie feature and everything else, how many days were you shooting for and how big was your crew kind of going around the city and doing this?
Yeah, so we knew from the start that we wanted to keep the crew minimal, just to move fast, and also have very limited equipment, so we don't need to carry a lot of stuff around or light for hours. We just couldn't afford it because we only had, I think we had, well, first 20 days, and then we added a bunch of like little scenes. So probably 22 days total.
Wow, that's impressive. I mean, because the film is, I want to say, just over an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes or so.
Yes, now hour and 45 minutes roughly. Yes.
That's very impressive. What do you feel like you learned on this that maybe you hadn't known before or something you changed for your next feature?
I love the fact that I generally in life, I love simplicity. And I'm always very inspired by Japanese movies or Asian movies in general. And I really try to make this a principle and restrict myself as in many ways. And maybe for a next movie, I could, I don't know, there's just this feeling, like that I could even be more extreme or try another twist on what simplicity could mean for the visual language, or the way you direct actors, or how you come up with compositions on camera. And even though this, like, I feel there already is a lot of simplicity in how this movie evolves and how the story is told.
I mean, watching it, it has, and hopefully this is a good comparison for you. Watching it, I got a lot of the same feelings I had while watching, like, If Beale Street Could Talk. It's simplicity, there's good music moments, fantastic acting, and it definitely sits with the silence that just allows the audience to kind of soak up the story and the feelings of what's going on there. What films or filmmakers, who do you draw from where you feel like you've kind of got that sensibility, or is that all just your own?
No, it's definitely, there is, it's funny, there is this weird, not weird, that doesn't do it justice, this Thai movie I keep going back to, and it's called The Last Life in the Universe. It's by a Thai director with like a very long name. I keep forgetting, but it's shot by Christopher Doyle, Wong Kar Wai's, In the Mood for the cinematographer that did In the Mood for Love. And it's, again, a very, very straightforward, very simple story, but told in with so much magic. A love story between a Thai prostitute and a Japanese guy who's very OCD. So chaos and order come together, and the moment they start, the moment the love starts, she allows him to clean up and he allows a little more chaos into his life. And it's just, I know, I just draw so many little moments out of that movie. And it's not, I think it's not very obvious often, but it's just something I keep going back to.
Yeah, that's impressive. I've never heard of that film, and it's definitely on my list to check out now.
Yeah, I think there's only a very, very bad, video stream like online. It's not available anymore for some reason.
That's what the streaming era does, right? A little
Yes,
harder
yes,
to go find.
yeah.
The film opens, I want to say, in 2 days, right? The 1st of December.
Friday, December 1. Yeah.
Okay. And limited release, are you going straight to festivals? What's the release schedule look like?
Well, it's a limited theatrical release first, and then it's gonna be like available online in end of February.
That's exciting. Okay. And I'll make sure to link once that's online and also with the theaters so people who are listening can go see it. What's the next film you want to make? Do you have an idea already that you've kind of gotten the holster, or are you starting blank slate and gonna take it after this one's had its run?
I'm working on two different scripts at the moment. It's, they're far from finished, and I haven't decided, like what's my next story gonna be, to be honest. It's at the moment it's a wide open field, and maybe I just wait for another download when I
Yeah.
go to acupuncture or
More
something.
acupuncture. There you go.
Yes, maybe that will do the trick.
What do you find intriguing about a movie versus a longer limited series or a TV show?
I I always find the complexity of and the depth of characters very, very, very intriguing. You can go so much deeper and 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 so much more complex in a way that you almost, like you draw this line and you go from this character to that character, from this location to the other location. That it's, I think, something that's very hard to do or to pull off in just in a feature. And I think that's what I love about limited series, that it's the universe you create is a little bit bigger than the universe you create with a feature.
How do you feel like, I mean, yeah, you've been in America for 15 years in Los Angeles. With the films you grew up watching, did you grow up watching Hollywood films or did you grow up watching more European films?
I grew up with a black and white TV with three local stations, and the highlight was David Hasselhoff in Knight Rider. So that
Classic.
that
Yep.
was, and so I often, Wednesday afternoons I went to my best friend's home, and they had cable TV, and so I binged watched like everything I could get, that was on, usually on the Wednesday afternoons. And that, I think, the absence of movies in my early childhood, it forced me to read much more. So um, I I think, when I think back, I often would read a book and see all these images like a movie in front of me, and then some chapters I just didn't like the images I created in my head. So I would jump back to the beginning of the chapter and paint a different picture until I loved what I saw. And I think that was kind of the origin of me becoming a director.
Yeah, having to create those images in your mind and not just, I mean, I remember even with me growing up, you saw the movie before you read the book a lot of times.
Yes.
Even Harry Potter was like, oh, the movie's around. Go see the movie, come read the book later. And to your point, you had to cut your teeth on creating the images in your head first, which is definitely showing out in the movie.
Yeah, and I had to, like I really felt like I had to catch up with a lot of Hollywood movies or just movie history later on, especially during film school. I just really kind of watched a lot of stuff.
Was there something you saw in film school a movie, a show, a clip, something that really just stuck with you that you're like, oh, I want to do something similar to that? And I know you mentioned the Thai movie, but is there another kind of a classic film or something you saw then that really stuck with you?
I was, the French Nouvelle Vague was something it just inspired me, especially, especially because they suddenly used hand cameras. That was something. Then I was heavily influenced by I mentioned him already, Wong Kar-wai, Chungking Express, In the Mood for Love, all that exotic aesthetic just really hit me when I first saw these movies. And they stayed with me throughout my film life, basically.
What advice do you have for someone who's coming up, maybe watching these movies, has an idea, wants to make a movie? What would you say would be, a couple tips for someone just to like how to get started, how to make that first feature film?
I come back to simplicity. I think simplicity can be a strength. Restriction can be something that really helps you find your path. And I don't see it as limitation. I see it, you limit, well, you just do the things that are absolutely necessary to reach your goal. And also the other thing, everybody knows how to make a successful movie, but I think you really need to trust. At the end of the day, you need to trust your gut feeling and just follow it, and read that inner compass, and do your own movie that grows inside you, and nobody else can do that for you, or write that for you.
Yeah, I've heard it once, make the movie that you want to go see, even if nobody else does. Do you
Yeah.
feel you did that with this movie?
Um, so sort of. It's interesting that it's something like my manager and I, we often talked about, um, let's not go for the obvious choice. Let's let's do what the your gut says, even though it might not be the way things are done in Hollywood. And it's the first movie, let's take the freedom to make it a little odd at times, or not the way things should, like, are supposed to be. And it was incredibly liberating to find my own voice.
I mean, watching the film, you have found more of your own voice, as you said, throughout the movie. It definitely has your tone, your style, everything else all the way through. And it's one of those movies to where, there were twists, there was turns, there were things, my expectations for a scene of, okay, shoes go missing, what happened? Oh, must have been A, B, C, D, and instead it was different. And to your point, you kind of guided the audience along without holding their hand the whole time. You kind of just like let it sit, let it sit. Let's see what happens. Some of the fights and arguments and more emotional moments too. Do you feel like this is getting out some of your own feelings inside, or is this all somewhere outside? Is there some part of you that comes out in these kind of emotional moments?
Oh, definitely. I there is so much, even though it, Marcus and Lani are come from a totally different background, but the core emotion of what they are going through is definitely very close to what I went through as a teenager. Even though it might not be obvious, and it might be deep down. But when I when we were editing the movie, I always went back to these feelings, and that gave me, the reference for, okay, this is the right moment. Let's choose that. Let's choose this part. And it really became a very, personal story. And also, for me, I think the most important part is, and it almost became the or is the mantra for my own life, that we're so, as humans, we're so immediately drawn to negativity, to drama. It's so easy to jump on that, but it's often very hard for us to see beauty, see the nice things that happen, even though they might not be loud. Drama is always louder. So that's also something, when they come across that sentence of where your thoughts go, the energy flows. It's it's just kind of like where life probably takes you, where you're, like, thought comes first, and then the physical reality follows in many ways. And it's oftentimes it's not in your hands, like there's just still a lot of shit, pardon my French, happening in life. But it's what I really like about the characters, that even though they go through all this hardship, they keep this openness for good things to happen in their lives, and especially for ideas that help them change something.
Yeah, I mean, you made that pretty clear, your philosophy and your belief that I want to say one part Marcus's voiceover says, when I learned to let go, things improved, or things got better. There are many moments in the film where I was like, this could just be a really sad, sad movie that has no glistening points, no silver linings, but instead you choose to kind of show the human spirit and the strength of, even though everything that's happened, and we find out more later in the movie about what could just really just be the most defeating circumstances, that the circumstances don't have to make the man. It is the person within themselves that kind of pushes forward and can shine through. And I thought it was really beautiful. I was like, wow, uh, could have been a very different movie. And instead, you chose to go with something a little deeper and more emotional and hopeful, which was definitely nice to see.
And thank you so much. And I think, it's that's you summed that up so well. For me, it's really important. There is this sadness in this movie, and I don't deny it, but I think at what stays at the end is hope. And if, like, only a handful of people kind of walk out the theaters with that little spark of hope in their hearts, how the way they look at the world today, I think then the movie has done its job.
Well, I hope it does, and I hope more people are able to see it, and especially with the stars attached and the story in and of itself, I hope more people are able to watch it because it's the kind of movie we need to see more of these days. It has a real human story in there with a lot of hope.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, thank you again for giving us this time, and I'm excited to see what you're going to do next, and we'll definitely check back in with you, and thanks again.
Thanks so much for having me.